What's going on, everyone? Juicebags here, and welcome back to some Dungeon Defenders 2 and another Protean Shift Era Defense Spotlight. Today we're going to talk about the Poison Dart Tower, and oh my gosh, there has always been just a million ways to build your PDTs, and right now it's even more. Now, when you first start thinking about your PDTs, there's two questions you need to answer for yourself. The first one being, do you want to use explosive poison? Do you want to use that explosion shard that spreads the poison around? The explosion itself is not a significant amount of damage. However, any enemies that are within that explosion range, it is going to spread the poison over to them. Now, remember, the Poison Dart Tower, it's all about the poison. If you look on the attack damage here, it's doing 115,000 damage per hit. However, the poison damage is ticking for 185,000 per hit at almost 3 times the rate. So the PDT is 100% all about the poison damage and not about the regular physical dart damage. Now, with that in mind, I personally absolutely love explosive poison. Now, you don't have to use explosive poison. I know lots and lots of endgame players that aren't using it, and they're just stoked with their PDTs and how they function. Now, if you are not using explosive poison, then it's going to allow you to give some more damage. Now, you're going to lose some of that AoE benefit, as the Poison Dart Tower does attack 3 targets at a time. It will never attack more than 3 targets. Let's get 4 of them targeted here. And as we see, it's just going to hit those 3 targets. Once it actually hits the first, second, and third target, as you see, it goes back to the first target, and it will stay on that target until it's dead. So the PDT will hit 3 targets at a time without using explosive, and that alone is a pretty significant amount of damage that's passing between the 3 current targets. Now, as I mentioned, the second that first enemy dies, then it would pick a new target and restart the rotation. However, just the general rule with the PDT is it's only going to hit 1, 2, and then 3, and then it will switch back over to target number 1 until it's dead. Not a huge deal, but it's nice at least to understand the basics of how the PDT functions. Now, with that being said, like I mentioned, I personally do absolutely love explosive poison. However, the second question you need to ask yourself is, do you want to max out the range? And here's the problem. The Poison Dart Tower has a relatively low range. Its range is 5,000 units is the cap. Now, just with your Ascension alone, you're going to be able to get, with 50 points into your Ascension, you'll have that range to 4,500. Now, with that being said, it is kind of a wasted slot to use Deadly Strikes or to try to increase that range any further. Now, the PDT does require a little bit of math if you do want to use the range. Now, as you see, I personally am using a Gilded Deadly Strike Shard. Now, with a Gilded Deadly Strike Shard, you have to have 10 points into the PDT Range Gambit to max it out. Any more points than this, and you're actually hurting yourself. If you didn't have a Gilded Deadly Strikes and you're going with a regular Deadly Strikes, that number is 19. It would require 19 points in the Poison Dart Tower Range Gambit to max out the range. Now, as you see, I've got points sitting here. However, if I apply these points to the Poison Dart Tower, I'm getting 0 benefit out of it. In fact, it's actually hurting me, because if I apply the points, I'm not getting any more range. However, I am still losing some defense power, and of course the poison damage is modified by that defense power stat. So defense power is king on the Poison Dart Tower, no doubt about it, and there is lots and lots of fun ways to build them. Now, as you see, I've got a very unconventional setup here on the PDT. This is not necessarily something that I would recommend. The reason I say that is I've got a maximum defense rate servo on the relic itself. Now, this brings my attack speed almost to the caps. The caps are 0.25 one poison rate tick every 0.25 seconds. I'm at 0.28, so 3/100ths of a second. Really, really small difference. The attack rate of the physical dart itself is once every 0.63 seconds. I'm at 0.7. I'd like to get that a little closer. However, it's not worth me putting another shard of defense rate into the PDT somewhere to make up that tiny, tiny little bit of difference. Now, a more conventional way to do your poison dart tower would probably be to not have the defense rate servo and instead shoot for a gilded defense rate shard, which would get you all the way down to those caps. With the defense rate servo I have, it's getting me close enough where I don't have to worry about the shard. Now, once again, my main focus was range. I want the explosion and I want the range. If you don't care about the explosion, don't sweat the explosion, go with more damage. So you can get rid of explosive poison, and say you didn't have that awesome defense rate mod, which obviously that's a pretty darn good one, you could just throw defense rate in the mix instead, and that would give you a very solid mix as well with defense rate, destruction, and deadly strikes. Now, on the same note, if you just didn't care about the range at all and you were more than content with 4,500, you can then get rid of that deadly strike shard and stack even more power on top of it. Currently, you can stack mass destruction and destruction. However, that is a bug and it will get fixed eventually. However, a shard that could be a go-to for you would be like vampiric empowerment. So defense rate, destruction, and vampiric empowerment would get you at a 4,500 range instead of a 5,000 range, which is pretty darn close. However, like I said, I personally just want to max out the range. So my go-to setup is explosive poison, destruction, and deadly strikes. The reason I've been putting this spotlight off a little bit, I've actually had this tower to where I want it for a while now, is because of the mods. And this is not going to be a conventional mod setup for you. It's going to be very rare that you find a max defense rate, and then you do want a piercer servo on it. The quality of the piercer servo is not super important, as the main thing you need is for that dart to penetrate the geodes. Once it penetrates the geode, the poison will tick for its normal amount. So the piercer servo itself is definitely a mod that you want to add onto your PDTs. Now, say you took the defense rate option on your shards instead of having this mod. A very nice replacement for defense rate right there would be some sort of element damage, maybe like storm damage. Now, this just changes the dart itself. It does not change the poison and make the poison tick for, say, storm damage. However, with storm damage as a mod on here, if you had another form of drench coming from somewhere else, you're going to just rack up electrocute combos, as the poison dart tower does attack very, very quickly. Now, just a few quick facts about the PDT. First off, the PDT is not going to clear a lane by itself, which means you're going to want to have something else in the lane. There used to be the little joke of the build was PDT plus anything else, and that still holds true. A poison dart tower can really bring the pain in a lane. However, it won't clear it by itself without some help from something else. In addition to that, remember that the poison is the big deal about the PDT. However, the poison damage does not stack, which means don't go spamming PDTs on the lane, as you're not maximizing the benefit. Of course, you will get the additional physical dart damage from the dart impacts themselves. However, you will get no additional poison stacking if you spam down PDTs or multiple PDTs in one lane. Now, with that in mind, poison dart tower poison does stack between different players. Now, I don't mean if you have two Huntresses. I mean if I'm playing and you're playing, and I put down a PDT and you put down a PDT, the poison will stack from two separate player sources. If I have two Huntresses and I put down one PDT with each of them, the poison will not stack. So by all means, if you're playing in a group, definitely stack up the poison and get multiple poison blasts going into the baddies. So moving right on into our Ascension. Now, as I mentioned, I've got a little bit of a wonky Ascension setup. However, in normal situations, you would want to follow the basic builder Ascension. And that would be go into full defense crit chance first, full defense crit damage after that, and then start working on the range gambit. In the defense category, you'd want to go defense speed first thing. Now, defense speed is crucial on it, as it is also going to modify those poison damage ticks. So get your defense speed maxed out first thing, and then go into poison dart tower damage to jack up that defense power and get that poison damage really kicking. Once again, if you are using a gilded deadly strike shard, you only want to put 10 points into your range gambit. If you're using a regular deadly strike shard, you're only going to want to put 19 points into your range gambit, and that will be minimizing the amount of loss you get by still shooting for that max range. If you put the points in and you throw a deadly strikes in here, not only is the deadly strikes, you're not getting its full value out of it, but you're just hurting yourself by going full range gambit right out of the gates. Without deadly strikes, of course, the range gambit must be full for certain. So that will do it for now. A little bit of a funky setup with the poison dart towers. However, they've been doing a great job for me. I know my damage output on them is not as high as if I went with that 4500 range. However, I'm very pleased with what they're doing, and it's an absolute wonderful addition to just about every single lane. So I'm throwing a poison dart tower in almost every lane of Onslaught, and definitely on every lane in any of the Chaos Expeditions. So thank you once again. Click that like button, please subscribe to the channel, and I will be back soon with more Dungeon Defenders 2. Thanks again, I'll see you next time.